The Los Angeles Chargers 2022 schedule has now been released, and they have 5 primetime games on the slate. And on today's show, we're going to be getting into all of the biggest games on the schedule, like Justin Herbert versus Tua Tagovailoa, and much more, and even some early record predictions.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together for over 6 seasons. We're heading into our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen on this very special schedule release episode on today's show. And to make sure you never miss the show, make sure you go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. But David, we finally have it. We knew the opponents, but now we know what order they're going to be in. And there's some very, very interesting things from the schedules. First of all, 5 primetime games. That's where we're going to start things in segment 1. We're going to break down the first half of the Chargers season, the biggest games in the first half of the season. And in segment 2, get into the biggest games in the second half of the season, including a pretty brutal stretch in the final 9 games for the Chargers. But me and David both have a pretty good feeling about the Chargers schedule and how they're going to finish things up. And at the end of the show, we're going to go game by game way too early and give you who is going to win and lose those games and give you what we think our very, very early Chargers prediction for their record is going to be. But David, first of all, one of the biggest things we were looking for with this schedule release is just the Chargers getting their due as one of the most exciting teams in the NFL and getting those primetime games. We knew with how loaded the AFC West was that they were going to probably get some just because, there's so many exciting teams there. But they started off Thursday Night Football week 2 against the Chiefs with that one. You have another one week 6 against the Broncos in the first half of the schedule on Monday Night Football, the first time going up against Russell Wilson. But the Chargers finally getting that credit they deserve as one of the best teams.
Absolutely, Daniel. It's about damn time. I think the Chargers and Justin Herbert showed the entire world last year that the Chargers are one of the most exciting teams in the NFL, especially you go back to that game against the Raiders, and it seems like the NFL is ready to see that one again right up front, like the first game. But the Chargers all over the prime time game slate, and you love to see it, and that's exactly where they should be. The Chargers, make no mistake, are one of the best teams in the NFL, and now the NFL is showcasing them as they should.
Well, and even besides the, Thursday Night Football game against the Chiefs, you get to pick up right where you left off, right? That crazy overtime game against the Raiders. Now week 1 to get your season off to a good start before you have to go to Kansas City and trying to win in week 2 on a Thursday night short week. You get the Raiders and Devontae Adams. I think all eyes are going to be on the Chargers, even not in a primetime game. It probably should have been. Chargers are maxed out at 5 primetime games, but that game, just because of the way it ended last season, is going to be a big one.
Oh, it's such fireworks. The way Justin Herbert and the Chargers just battled back and just went crazy, went into God mode.
So many fourth downs.
Did absolutely everything in his power to be able to keep the Chargers in it and really, try to go out and win the game. And just unfortunately, they didn't do quite enough. And the Chargers went out there and free agency and in the draft and addressed a lot of holes, and they have a much, much different team. And you better believe they are definitely trying to get that revenge after that game. That was a hard loss to swallow, a very difficult, very painful one. And I expect the Chargers to be extremely fired up to get that one back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other big one inside of the division, obviously, if you can kick off, week 2 with a win over the Chiefs, right, potentially be 2-0 at that spot, and we'll get into our predictions for these games later. You'll be in a great spot. But I think the next big one, right, having to face off against Russell Wilson for the first time, one of the biggest additions in a wild, wild arms race in the AFC West. The Chargers, week 6, are going to host the Broncos on Monday Night Football. Wow, would it feel nice to give Russell Wilson a nice AFC West welcome and beat him in that first game going up against the Broncos. Divisional games are always tough, but they're so important. That'll be a huge game for the Chargers.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I just love the fact that the AFC West is being featured here as they should. I mean, the Chargers, again, we already talked about how exciting they are. The Broncos coming into town, it seemed like for many years that they were only missing one piece, and that was the quarterback. And
Yep.
they traded a boatload of assets to try to fix that problem and bring in Russell Wilson. And so that matchup is going to be very, very difficult. A slobber knocker, as they always are with the AFC West battles. It's going to be physical. It's going to be tough. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Chargers answer the challenge of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and I mean it's going to be interesting to see, how that team looks now because they're also having, a first-year head coach as well over there with Nathaniel Hackett having his first season. So you wonder how long it's going to take them to gel. I think it would
Yeah,
have been nice to probably get them earlier on in
that's
the
what I
season.
said, man. I wanted
Yeah,
to
we were
see them
talking about that
early.
before. But, when you're looking at those first 4 games, I mean, Raiders, Chiefs, and then Jaguars, Texans, I mean, you'll
Yeah,
probably be at that Texans game, David. If they lose that
I
again, you might
will.
have to quit your Chargers fandom.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give up if they really mess that one up again. If I go out there and spend my money and go into that game, they better go out there and put on the performance that they
Uh,
should.
Yeah, the closest game, I mean, you're gonna get. So, I mean, you have to hope that the taste that was left in their mouth after that terrible COVID-ridden game last season that really kept them out of the playoffs, really, when all things were said and done. You have to hope that they can avenge that one for sure. And no COVID protocols in 2022. So the Chargers won't be missing, 10 of their best players in that one. But I
Thank
do think
God.
the other interesting thing here from the first half of the schedule was when the bye week is, because the
Yeah,
Chargers have their bye week this year in 2022, week 8, which is, you know, probably pretty, in the middle. I
yeah.
think. I mean, I think when you ask players, they usually say later in the season. I mean, it's just a nice break down the
Of course.
stretch, to get healthy and things like that. But pretty central. But I do think it'll be important because after that bye week, they'll get the Falcons, which should be a win as we're seeing things right now. I mean, who knows
Yeah.
how it's all going to play out there, but you get that bye week before a pretty brutal stretch they're going to face in the second half.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I think, just going back to the beginning of the schedule too, I like the fact that they're getting the Thursday night football game out of the way early, and
That's another
really
good
having
point.
putting that behind them. And
Huge.
that's going to be another kind of mini bye too, because, you're going to have 13 days to prepare for the Jacksonville Jaguars after that. And then, yeah, going into that second bye week, or the first bye week, right? The real actual bye
Yeah.
week. I think that is a good spot for the Chargers to have it. Obviously, it would be great to have it a little bit later, but having it in the middle, I think hopefully they're going to be able to mitigate some injuries, and they're going to be able to keep this roster in good shape, just like the sports performance team did last year with the team.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were calling the Jaguars a bye week for a second there. That's pretty funny. The
No,
Jaguars
no.
at home, I mean, should be a bye week for the Chargers. But shout out to the Chargers social media staff as well. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend going and looking at the reveal on Twitter by the Chargers, a little anime schedule reveal, doing something different. The best social media team
And of
in the
course the Pop
NFL.
Tarts too. I mean,
Oh,
oh
and the
my God,
Pop
they're so
Tarts. You got to do the
hilarious.
pop. It makes me uncomfortable, and I still love it. But like just the anime Chargers release, where it's like a sad Jaguar sitting in a bar, a la Urban Meyer, right? And then there's the Raiders having their ship in the bottle in a trash can. I mean, there's Kyler Murray deleting all of his social media posts. Like, I had to watch it again just because there's so many little things, so many intricate details.
That's
But
why
that
they
was
want
like
a
a
Webby.
perfect.
That's why they want a Webby,
Yeah.
because they are one of the best in the business, period.
Oh, I mean, very, very deserving. And I mean, they beat out, I mean, like countries for that because there were some countries nominated for that. But again, NFL Chargers releasing the schedule and just absolutely nailing it there. But I think, David, in the first half of this season, like the Chargers have a good chance to get off to a really hot start. In my opinion, I think they're going to need it because, I mean,
Yeah,
it's going to get a lot tougher for them down the stretch. There's no team on their schedule they can't beat, right? So, like, let's
yeah,
get that out of the way right now.
I agree.
But at the same time, though, like when you're having so many successive games where, you're facing these hard teams, especially later on in the season as your team gets banged up, it's going to be really, really tough. But I mean, there's a chance. I mean, the Chargers are, 7-1 after the first 8 games, like something like that, 6-2 after the first 8 games. And we'll get into our schedule predictions at the end of this show. But I would bet on the Chargers having a really, really good first half of the season with the way this schedule lays out and give all these new players and Brandon Staley time to gel and really get this defense put together the right way. But if you are betting, the only place to go is betonline.net because they are official betting sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast. and they are our partners who continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. So now that you guys have seen the schedule, if you guys want to take your bets over to betonline.net, the best place to bet, you guys can see how it lines up with where their wins at. They were at 10 wins, the over-under last time I checked on it. If you guys think they're going to hammer that, you know where to go. And I think if you listen to the predictions at the end of the show, you might want to take your money while before, it gets to a higher number, because that would definitely not surprise me. But make sure you guys head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David, we talked about the Chargers' first 8 games of the season. Now we're getting to the final 9 games of the season where things are really going to turn on. And we'll start it here. Week 10 at 49ers on Sunday Night Football. Will it be Jimmy G? Will it be Trey Lance? We don't know yet. Week 11 versus the Chiefs. Week 12 at the Cardinals. Week 13 at the Raiders. Week 14, Justin Herbert versus Tua. The Chargers versus the Dolphins. Then you end it with a pretty brutal last 4 games, too. Week 15 versus the Titans and potentially Derrick Henry. Week 16 at the Colts and Matt Ryan, another really good running game. And then you have the battle for LA, Week 17 at home against the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football. And then you have Week 18 at the Broncos. So having to go into the cold, into Mile High in the last game of the season, that is a game to watch for sure. But let's start, David, with the big one here. And I think it is Justin Herbert versus Tua, because right now Tua is 1-0. More air quotes, against Justin Herbert, but with the defense doing a lot of work in Justin Herbert's rookie season going up against the Dolphins. The Dolphins defense was really, really good. But it's a game, David, that all eyes are going to be on, because, no matter what these dudes do in their career, they're always going to be linked. And you can throw Joe Burrow in that as well. The Chargers aren't playing against the Bengals and Joe Burrow this year. So the only other, major draft pick that's next to Justin Herbert is the guy who went literally one spot ahead of him into Tua Tagovailoa. And I'm sure everyone out there has seen, the bombs that Tua has been dropping to Tyreek Hill over the top. But that is one day I'm going to be keeping a special eye on, because that one I would think would mean a little bit more to Justin Herbert. And, the Chargers probably want to get revenge in that game.
Oh, 100%. Justin Herbert, he's such a quiet guy.
He'll never say it.
So unassuming. Like his PR skills are fantastic. Like if you go to a class on how to answer questions at a press conference, that's exactly going to be Justin Herbert. He's going to be the instructor of that class, because he just does not give away any type of information. But yeah, you better believe this is personal to him. They are always going to be linked together. I think Tua's got him on victories so far in his career, but Justin Herbert just went crazy with the stats. Obviously, one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history in the first 2 years of his career. He has records upon records upon records, but he wants to beat the Dolphins. He wants to get that one back. This is going to be a big matchup. I think the Chargers are in much better position to get that one too.
Well, I think the biggest difference between this matchup and the first time these two guys matched up, is that Justin Herbert's going to have a much more complete team around him, right? Tua came in with a much better defense. And the funny thing about the Tua wins argument and quarterback wins argument is Tua gets wins for all of the games where Ryan Fitzpatrick had to come in and save the Dolphins and lead them to victory. So those stats are pretty much meaningless, but I do think there is going to be some meaning to some of these players, and even not even just Justin Herbert, right? I think that the other dudes around him in the locker room are going to want to go get that one for him, and maybe want to intercept, Tua Tagovailoa a little bit more, just because they want to prove that their dude they have is one of the best in the league, right? Another one may not be. We'll find out. But getting to the other biggest game, I think, David, in the back half here, I think it's Week 17. You're taking on the defending champs in Los Angeles, of course, on Sunday Night Football. That's huge. Not only is it, just a huge game branding-wise and having these two teams face off, and you have the up-and-comer coming up against the Super Bowl champions, but the other part of it is, David, is that's going to be a pivotal game in how the Chargers finish their schedule. We don't know what their record's going to be at that point, but, is at least for seeding, right? Maybe just to even make the playoffs, the Chargers might need that game. And it is also going to be a great test for them, right? A great barometer as they head into a potential playoff run. Where do you stand? Because I'll tell you one thing, you go in there, you knock off the Super Bowl champions, you're going to be feeling pretty good going into the playoffs.
Yeah, such a huge matchup so late, and so many storylines that are behind this. You got the fight for LA out there, and hey, to be the best, you got to beat the best. And the Rams won the Super Bowl last year, and the Chargers, they want to do that. But last year is last year. The Rams won the championship last year. The Chargers want to stake their claim this year. And I know this is going to be a game that they're going to want to win for the fan base and for the city to try to continue that battle, to continue to win. Huge matchup late on in the season, Daniel. That one's going to be really, really exciting to watch. Great barometer to see where this team really is.
Yeah, and then I think the other couple of games that stand out to me as far as the back half of the schedule here when you're looking at these games are week 15 and 16. I think those are almost going to be like a manhood check, right? Because
Yeah.
you're getting a couple of bruising teams that, if you haven't been tested by that point, you're going to get tested there. I mean, obviously, you don't know. I mean, later on in the season might be good for the Titans, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
you don't never know with Derrick Henry, especially with all that wear and tear later on in the season. I mean, there's always a chance and you hope that he doesn't get hurt, but like just, historically, that's kind of how it's worked out. You
Yeah.
don't really want to see Derrick Henry when it's cold,
Nope.
right? in December, right? Later on in the season, because that's an even tougher dude, an even bigger load to try to take down. But that's two big games right there because the Titans were the number 1 seed last year. It's easy to forget that, but like
Yeah.
they were one of the best teams in the NFL. They also still have a pretty soft division with, not expecting much from the Texans, not expecting much from the Jaguars. Still, I mean, these two teams are probably going to beat up on the rest of their division, and I think will still be very tough teams to play because for the Chargers, what was their biggest thing last year, right? The weakest part of their
Run
team
defense, man.
for the run defense. Now you're getting Jonathan Taylor and potentially Derrick Henry, right, in reverse order, back-to-back season or back-to-back weeks, right? So, like, I think when you're looking at the back half of the schedule, like we're talking about barometers, how the Chargers are going to look going into the playoffs, like that's going to be, a physicality barometer. Are you physical enough to hang with these teams who are willing to just pound the rock and try to keep the ball out of Herbert's hands? I mean, we've seen it with the Titans against Patrick Mahomes several times, right? They've beat the Chiefs in large part to being able to just pound them on the ground, shorten the game, right? Be able to do that whenever they want, take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. That's going to be a huge test for the Chargers late in the season.
Yeah, I think the Titans they really, really take on the image of their leader, of their head coach, Mike Vrabel. I mean, he's a really tough guy. He was a tough football player when he was playing, and they've always just been physical. And the Chargers have said they want to be a bigger, stronger, more physical football team. Well, that's going to be the test right there because those guys, they do work. They're trying to run you over. Like they're not trying to, cut the field up with sexy passes. They're trying to run the ball down your throat. And so the Chargers made several additions to try to fix that run defense. You're really going to get tested to see if the moves that they made were the right ones.
Yeah, I think Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson should probably get double the game paychecks that week. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're going to have to earn it, right? But those are two weird teams too, just because like the Titans just traded away AJ Brown. You know what I mean? Like, what is their receiving core at this point? They don't have Julio. They don't have AJ Brown. Their top 2 receivers from last year, the Traylon Burks, but that's a rookie.
Yeah.
Is the Ryan Tannehill, carriage going to turn into a pumpkin as I've been waiting for like the last couple of years? Like his run
seriously
with them pretty much got exposed a little bit in the playoffs, but at the same time, like they were the number 1 seed. But, when you have that playoff performance, and now you have Malik Willis coming in behind you, maybe that puts a little bit of pressure on him, but the Titans are always tough. It seems like every year they're almost like the Mike Tomlin, right, in the AFC South, where it just seems like they're always going to have a decent record. No matter what's going on with them, they're just a really, really tough team. And the Colts have Matt Ryan now, so they're not going to be a slouch, right? And they still have some big question marks, I would say, too. But that's going to be a legit team, I think, with Matt Ryan. And then you finish the season up at the Broncos in Week 18. That's going to be a really tough game. You have the altitude. You have the weather. I think you're probably hoping that you don't have to worry about that game, like by that point, if you're the Chargers are as good as we expect them to potentially be, they shouldn't need that game to get into the playoffs. But the one thing we talk about every single year, David, is just there's no divisional game that can be taken easy. Like it's going to be so hard to make the playoffs if you don't have a winning record inside of your own division. And I think, if I had to guess, I'd say the Chargers probably split it 3-3, just because I think that's how tough the AFC West is. I think they're going to do much better outside of their division. But let's put our money where our mouths are, David, because we have to give some very, very early game-by-game predictions for the 2022 season and talk about what we think the Chargers' final record is going to be when things are all said and done. So coming up next, we're going to break it into 4s and 5s as far as how many games we'll get into, but we're going game by game, matchup by matchup to finally predict what the Chargers record will be when things are all said and done. I think you guys will be very lucky, right? We're very happy with where we think the Chargers are going to end up at the end of things. But speaking about putting my money where my mouth is, one thing I'd love to be putting in my mouth right now is a Built Bar, because they are the best protein bars that are out there. They're the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And there's so many different varieties and flavors that you guys can choose from. Not only do you have the regular protein bar, the Built Bar, that tastes great, right? And is just like a traditional protein bar, but you can also get the Built Puffs, which are the first ever protein infused marshmallow in these Built Bars with flavors like banana cream pie, cinnamon churro, and now you can even get Built granola bars. I didn't think I could love Built Bars more than I do, but then you're throwing out white chocolate berry flavor granola bars, right? And you have chocolate peanut butter granola bars to go along with the great regular flavors that they have all the time, like cherry barcia, cookies and cream, coconut almond, caramel. I mean, so many different great flavors to choose from. And most bars have 130 calories or less. They have 17 grams of protein and less than 4 grams of sugar and 4 grams of net carbs. But Built Bars are just a different kind of protein bar. Get something that doesn't have that waxy, chalky taste to it. Get something that tastes great and also fits on your diet, which is very tough to do, and save some money while you're doing it. Since you listen to this show, you can go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, David. Well, I hope that you're nervous here, because we are going to go game by game. Way too early to be doing this, but it's just too much fun to resist. So if you guys are out there watching on YouTube, watching on Twitter, put in the comments what you think the Chargers' final record is going to be. Talk about the biggest games you can't wait to watch. And also, you can go game by game too and tell us how you think this whole thing is going to break down. So, David, let's start with the first 4 games of the season for the Chargers. You have week 1 versus the Raiders. You get that at home. That's nice. Week 2 at the Chiefs. Short week, Thursday night football. Week 3 versus the Jaguars. In week 4 at the Texans, which I fully expect you to be at, even though I wouldn't blame you if you weren't because of what happened last year. All right, David. So go through those game by game. Win, loss. How do you think it's going to turn out?
Yeah, I think when I went through this first stretch of the season, I was kind of going back and forth whether it was going to be 3-1 or 4-0. Oh, wow. And so, I mean, for me, I went ahead and went with 3-1 just because I think that those first 2 games are going to be really tough.
I think if you split those, you'd be happy with it.
Yeah, and that's how I have it. You know, I have them winning the first game against the Raiders, losing against Kansas City, and then I have them picking up wins against Jacksonville and against Houston.
Yeah, and we actually have that the same exact way. I have week 1 win, week 2 loss on Thursday Night Football. That's tough. Week 3 win against the Jaguars, week 4 win against the Texans. I mean, anything less than 3-1 at that point to me is a big disappointment. I mean, especially with some of the tougher teams. Like, one of the reasons the Chargers didn't make it last year is not taking care of business against bad teams. And that's what we saw against teams like the Texans, right? And not doing better against, the Raiders or even the Broncos in games that they should have won instead of splitting those series. So I think if you start 1-1 inside your division, 3-1 after the first 4 games, you're pretty happy about that. So let's go to the next 4 games here, David, including the bye week. So you have Browns at the Browns. You have versus the Broncos on Monday Night Football. You have versus the Seahawks. And then you have a bye before you go to the Atlanta and play the Falcons. So some weird teams in there. How do you feel like this one's going to play out for those next 4 games in the first half of the Chargers season?
Yeah, I mean, there might be a little bit of a surprise here for some, but I think this is a 4-0 section for me. I think I have the Chargers winning every single one of these games, whether it's Deshaun Watson at quarterback or not. I actually don't think it will be. I think there's still going to be a suspension that's going to come down the pipeline.
It could be.
Obviously we don't know that yet, but that just seems like, the most likely outcome there. But I have them picking up all 4 wins. I think this is a section where they absolutely should win every single one of these games.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even talk about this beforehand. We have it the same. I mean, I have the Chargers 7-1 in their first 8 games of the 2022 season. So I don't have them going 15-2. I can promise you that. But
neither do I.
For the Browns, I mean, with Deshaun, I think that's a big difference. I mean, yeah. I think in this win, I'm assuming he's not going to be there because, I mean, you look at what the Browns did last year with Baker Mayfield, and they have Nick Chubb back there, right? Kareem Hunt, a really good rushing attack, a good offensive line, and then you have Deshaun Watson. That's going to change everything for them offensively. It's going to make them a very tough team to beat. I am also probably leaning towards him not being there and the league stepping in. And I mean, his contract and the way they set that up would kind of lean to tell you that because they made it so small in his first season.
Yeah, they knew.
But I have that being a win. I have them beating Russell Wilson for the first time, welcoming him to the AFC West on Monday Night Football. I mean, I don't think Justin Herbert's losing his first 2 primetime games, right?
Nope.
Primetime Justin Herbert. I mean, that's like one of the biggest things from this schedule is like you get 5 games of primetime Justin Herbert, maybe 6, depending on how that week 18 plays out. Because I mean, the max was 5, but they
You get
always
flexed
flex
into
that
more.
last game. Yeah. I mean, that last game, if it's do or die for the season in the best division in football,
They're going to
you're
do
telling
it.
me that's not going to be on there, right? I mean, I think
Absolutely.
it has to be. So
Yeah.
I have them beating the Broncos, and then I have them beating the Seahawks. I mean, God forbid we see another crazy Drew Lock game. I think with the Chargers rebuilt roster, I hope for those games are over. Just letting someone like Drew Lock come back for 3 touchdowns in the
Yes.
fourth quarter or whatever that
Yes.
was. And I mean, Bryce Callahan can't intercept Justin Herbert in the end zone because Bryce Callahan's on the Chargers now. So I have them beating Drew Lock and that weird Seattle team this year. Not really sure what to expect from them.
Right.
And then the Falcons and Marcus Mariota, right? Whoever ends up beating, I have them winning that game as well. Starting the season 7-1. Those are the teams the Chargers have to beat. I mean, last year it was weird because they had such a tough start to the schedule and they still started off so hot before they ended up getting shellacked by the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
But like they won some games early on, especially that game at Kansas City last year, early on in the season. Getting that win was huge for the Chargers. And then I think this year they're going to have another hot start and get off to a 7-1 start to start their season. So now we're going into the grueling part. We're talking about the back half of the schedule for the Chargers, and it starts week 10 at San Francisco on Sunday Night Football. I know everything I said about Justin Herbert. That's going to be another tough game away from home. Then you go versus the Chiefs, week 12 at the Cardinals, and week 13 at the Raiders. So, David, next 4 games of the season right now, you're 7-1 with the Chargers. How do you think the next 4 after that are going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where things start to get really tough, and this is where I have a little bit of a difference in how I have the win-loss here. I have them losing, unfortunately, to the 49ers. I think that's a really tough matchup. They really have a good defense there. I have them beating the Kansas City Chiefs. I also have them beating the Arizona Cardinals there, and I have them losing to the Raiders. So I'm going 2-2 for this stretch.
Me and David have every pick the same so far. We did not talk about these before the show. I mean,
Literally
it
not
makes
at
me
all.
want to switch one of them, right? I mean, I think it could go a lot of different ways. Like the 49ers, the biggest thing there is it's going to be Trey Lance or is it going to be Jimmy G? Because that offense could look a lot different depending on what the answer is there. I mean, Jimmy G doesn't scare me that much. I mean, unless it's Trey Lance, kind of having a breakout season. But they are one of those teams, kind of like we were talking with the Titans. Like they're just always tough. They were tough when it was CJ Beathard, right?
Really well coached. And just love the leadership and the organization they have.
Well coached for sure. And a really, really good running game usually as well. So that'll be another big test for the Chargers earlier on this season than those Titans and Colts games. So I have that as the lost Chiefs a win because I think it's splitting. I mean, it could go opposite too, right? They could win week 2 potentially and then lose against the Chiefs in week 1. They could win both. We don't know. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a split. So that's just the way it played out on my schedule here. The Cardinals are a weird team. I don't know how to feel about them. I don't know how good they're going to be, especially just the way they fizzled out last season. Then you have the Kyler Murray drama in the offseason. Like that one, I'm just going to put a win for the Chargers. I just think they're a better team. And then I think the Raiders are an improved team. I think, of course, it's just the Raiders, Chargers. It always goes 1-1 recently. So I have that being the one loss with the win they had against them in week 1 to start their season. So at that point, David, both of us are 9-3.
Yep.
Raise your hand if you'd sign up for a 9-3 start out there, everybody. The podcast audience, I will tell you that me and David are indeed raising our hands when you listen to this. But 9-3, sign the dotted line right now. And it doesn't even seem like we're being like super crazy and like super, biased in this, like, or even super optimistic. Like, yeah, I mean, that's a really good record. And it's tough to beat every team, whatever. It seems pretty realistic, but this is where the losses kind of start coming, right? Because you're not going to win all the games. And the last 5 games of the season are going to be really tough. And the last 5 games go like this. Week 14 versus the Dolphins. Week 15 versus the Titans. At least back-to-back home games there. Week 16 at Mount Ryan and the Colts. Week 17 versus the Rams. And Week 18 versus the Broncos. And the Rams games, Sunday Night Football. Colts on Monday Night Football. And that 49ers game is also going to be on Sunday Night Football as well. So, David, final 5 games of the season, you have the Chargers starting 9-3. How do you see the last 5 weeks playing out?
Yeah, so starting with the Miami Dolphins here, I think Justin Herbert definitely wins. So I'm chalking that up for the Chargers. Then I have a loss versus Tennessee. I just think that, like I said, that's a really tough matchup. They're a very physical group. And again, like Daniel said earlier, I truly think the Chargers can literally beat anyone on their schedule. Whether they're going to do that or not, obviously, is another entirely. But then I have them beating the Indianapolis Colts, losing to the Rams, and winning their final game against the Denver Broncos, finishing that last section 3-2 for an overall final record of 12-5.
Yeah, I mean, so we're a little bit different, and we'll end up at the same spot, but it's a little bit different. 12-5 is great. I mean, raise your hand if you'd sign up for 12-5. I think 12-5 borderline wins you the division. I don't know if the
Yeah.
Chiefs are the juggernaut that they've been the last couple of years. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Tyreek Hill replacement goes, because that dude is just such a freak like that.
Yeah.
You can't replace him with one player. I mean, I've liked some of the moves. I've liked some of their draft picks, but they lost 2 stars. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. They lost Tyreek Hill. The Chargers lost 0 stars, and they added a bunch of stars. So I think that's going to really close the gap inside that division. I have them winning against the Dolphins to a revenge game, winning against the Titans in week 15, winning against the Colts week 16. Those ones were really tough for me. The Colts especially, I think that game's a toss-up. I think they're going to be a good team next year. We'll see, what the teams look like at that point all the way in week 16 of the season.
Yeah.
On Monday Night Football, I think primetime Justin Herbert gets it done that week and then doesn't get it done the next week against the Rams, Super Bowl champions. I mean, those last 3 games are so tough. I mean, it's going to be a really tough part of their schedule, and it's going to be hard to win those last 3 games in a row. But luckily, I had the Chargers doing so good up until that point. It's not going to matter because they're going to make the playoffs anyways, because I have them losing to the Rams and the Broncos the last 2 weeks of the season, still finishing with a record of 12-5. I mean, you don't obviously want to end the season on 2 losses, David, but it's probably going to be hard-fought losses if they do lose those games. And it's just some point you have to get to 12-5 somehow. I think that's around where the Chargers are, 11-6, 12-5, with how tough their schedule is. That would be a monumental victory and living up to the expectations, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the regular season is concerned, I feel like, with the assembly of talent that they went out there and gathered this offseason, I think this is where they should be. I mean, just based off of what they had before with Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen and, Derwin James and Joey Bosa, and then you add compliments to them with, J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack, and just adding more stars and also fixing your run defense, or at least seemingly fixing your run defense. On paper, adding guys that are fantastic against the run. And, they're just such a deep team that I feel like this Chargers team is going to be very, very good if they're able to stay healthy. Knock on wood here.
Let's go.
This is definitely a Chargers team that can compete with anybody, no matter when they strap it up.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, this team can't live up to expectations in the regular season. It's just impossible. I mean, you go 17-0. It's like, well, but I mean, the floor as far as not disappointing this year, I think, is winning 2 playoff games, borderline AFC championship game. I agree. It's AFC championship game or bust for this team with how the contracts play out with Justin Herbert's rookie contract. So 12-5 gives you a good seed. Only 1 seed gets a bye now, so I don't know if it's going to get you a bye at 12-5, but the AFC is so loaded that you never know. These teams are going to beat each other up. I mean, I think 12-5 gets you into the dance, right? Maybe wins you the division in the AFC West, and it keeps you away from, probably a lot of 10-7, 11-6 teams that are going to be out there. Because, I mean, let's look at it. I mean, the AFC West is all loaded. Then you have teams like the Bills, the Ravens, the Steelers, right? The Bengals, who are coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. And you have teams like the Titans and the Colts. And you have teams, even like the Patriots and the Dolphins, where it's still a little unsure what they're going to be at this point. But the one thing we know is it's going to be incredibly tough. 12-5 gets you there. 12-5 we would take absolutely right now. And I'm not going to say less than that's a disappointment, but they have the team, they have the roster, they have the coach in place, in my opinion, to go get it done. So now it's time to do it. I'm very excited about it. We'll talk about more with the schedule and some of the biggest games, right? And some of the places where the Chargers season could potentially turn around and games that might be must wins for them. But that's going to wrap things up for today. Thank you to everyone who checked out the live stream, and to make sure you never miss things like this, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnLAC. You can also follow me on Twitter at DanTalkSports and David Droegemeier on Twitter at DroTalkSD. We are here for you guys every day of the week, your team every day. So make sure you guys keep on following everywhere that you can so you never miss the show. And you can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We post all the shows to all of those pages every single day. If you guys want to call into the show, the number is 323-524-7924, and we try to get every Chargers voicemail played on the show. So get your guys' schedule reactions in there. But We will be back with you guys on Monday, as always. But until then, take it easy and go Bulls.